Welcome to Leadership, the Secret Sauce, the podcast where we talk to extraordinary coaches and leaders to dive into the realms of leadership and coaching. We're your hosts, Dave Lipsky and Matt Dodson. So let's jump in with another guest and find out their answer to the question, what is your secret sauce? And before we begin, a quick shout out to our sponsor, Character Matters Coaching and Consulting, where they believe that your character is the compass guiding you through life's journey. Whether you're facing personal or professional challenges, they are dedicated to helping you discover and strengthen the core values that define who you are. Dave, can you give us a little bird's eye view of our episode today?
I wanted to welcome Mark to our podcast. And Mark, Matt and I created this podcast because we like to learn about coaches and their secret sauces, a little bit about what they do. And one of the things that we've also found that is helpful is, how coaches introduce themselves. But we're going to start off with a quick energy check-in. On a scale from 1 to 10, your energy level, 1 being low, 10 being high, where would your energy be at the present moment?
I would say, for my age, it's around 7.
I'll take it.
7 is a fabulous number. And Matt, how about you?
Yeah, I'm probably at an 8.5. I've had a couple cups of coffee. And yeah.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
All
yeah.
right. You know
ready.
what? I'm balancing out to 2. I'm at around an 8. So I'm and I am coming off a little bit of jet lag from travel last week, but I'm getting back into the groove, and it's a really nice time here. On the East Coast, we have our pear trees with the blossoms out, so it looks a little bit like cherry blossoms in Washington, D.C. So I'm always excited to walk around, and I'll be doing the lawn a little bit later. Nice. So, Mark, quick question. When you are traveling and somebody turns to you and says, what do you do? How do you introduce yourself?
That's really difficult because, I've been working for nearly 40 years. Well, over 40 years, and my parents don't even know what I do. And it's very hard to explain to them, right? So to somebody on a plane, which I do travel quite a bit, I would say that I'm in the learning and development business, and I help people grow professionally, to be honest. And then it depends where the conversation goes. And I could go down a coaching conversation. I could go down an organizational development conversation. It could be completely organic, but I tend to start broadly because even that might be like, what's an L&D professional? What does that even mean? But it's a little bit easier to answer.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. And then people kind of understand like, oh, got it. What is learning and development?
Or they think, how boring. I wish I was sitting next to somebody else.
Mark, you're hardly boring. Come on. Yeah.
I'm thinking the first thing they're thinking is, I could use some of that.
Yeah. And that has happened. Believe you me. I actually used to be a nurse. That was my very first career, and I always think about nursing as helping people learn. Their context has changed, an illness has come along, they've got disability, so people have to learn differently. So I had no idea at 19 years old when I started nursing that I would be moving into learning and development, but which is the same thing, but in a corporate environment through coaching or whatever. It's always helping somebody make some form of transition or change. And so back to the plane, I've sat next to people who are having a panic attack. So I've used so a bit of nursing, but a lot of the time coaching, helping someone be present, using their breathing, to calm down, to refocus. I mean, somebody was very distressed, and I thought, oh my goodness, we're gonna have to get an ambulance here. But it worked because he responded. So you never know where that goes. So sometimes I might offer what I do, but if somebody asks me what I do, it tends to go into a very interesting conversation.
Yeah. Mark, what is your secret sauce? How would you describe it?
Yeah, it's a very, this one came up to me really. The answer to that question came up to me pretty quickly. And it's about, from a coaching context, of course, this is what this podcast is all about, is coaching at the right level. And so what do I mean by that? A lot of coaches get trained to focus at the behavior and results level. Then we find out there's a little bit more to that, and we should be focusing on the thinking and the feeling, which is fantastic if we get to that point, because more significant change can happen. But for me, the secret sauce, and it's being reinforced in a number of ways, which I know is one of the other questions coming up, but that's being reinforced as focusing on the level of meaning and values, because that's really where the real work happens. And for me, that's the extra value that coaching brings. However, I feel a lot of coaches, through no fault of their own, operate at that top level, which I think only gets people so far. And for me, the secret sauce is really getting through the thinking and feeling to that coaching at that much deeper level, which is around transformation and sustaining of change.
Mark, so coaching at the right level, when did you know that was your secret sauce? Like, at what point in time? I mean, was it nursing? Was it a fresh corporate job? What was it?
No, it certainly wasn't nursing. But when I did my initial coach training years ago in South Africa, actually, it was called the Consciousness Coaching Academy. So it was a mix of Western and Eastern philosophy. And so the concept of being and being present and who you are rather than what you do, and we'll probably return to this concept later, was very much ground in my coaching, but I lost it. I lost the essence of that. Because coaching in the company that I worked for, focused on behaviors, which is, again, not anything wrong. So I sort of unlearned that level. So I went from values and being, I think I missed feelings and thoughts, and went straight back to results and behavior for many, many years, because I was teaching it also with Matt. I was teaching that was the conversation, that was the books. So I lost it. I lost my secret sauce. I got another brand, and it was actually an internal program more recently, where I rediscovered that in the last couple of years, and then some other things. You know how the universe brings you books, and that's one of the resources I'd like to share at the end. That hey, go back to your core values of coaching. Go back to what you learn. Go back to what you know really, really works. So I had it, I lost it, and I've gone back to it.
You know, Mark, so when you refound it,
yes,
rediscovered,
when I got born again.
Born again. Okay, like, and when was it just like the penny dropped? Like, oh, this is what I always liked. I mean, what happened? Like,
well, it was seeing a diagram on a screen, actually. So it was a visual thing for me, and I don't necessarily go for visual person, hearing person, doing person. I think we are all of those things. We just start in a particular area, and so I needed to see it and to again hear it was a class, and the incredible instructor going through that again and explaining those 3 levels. So seeing it and hearing it and then practicing it again, I thought, no, I've still got it. and everything that I'd thought I'd unlearned, of course, I'd never had. It just refreshed what I knew. So I hope that answers the question, because sometimes I think it is that reading of a book. It is maybe something just in nature. It is meeting a friend that suddenly clicks sometimes at the right time in your life when you need to hear it, and then you re-engage with what you really need to know at the right time.
Yeah, I like how you described the levels, and I was picturing like longitude, latitude, something, right?
Mhm.
Where I'm on the other side of the conversation, you're coaching me. How would I experience you bringing me to the level that's most valuable?
Mm. One of the quickest ways is, well, a lot of the training and a lot of programs and a lot of coaches say, so what do you need to do? Which is behavioral. What I always almost ask an awful lot, even very, very early, is who do you need to be? So it's the different question. Who do you need to be in this situation? Not, or how do you need to be, which is even more slightly weird. How do you need to be? Because it doesn't feel grammatically correct, but it really just causes some distortion in a healthy way and gets people to think differently. How do I need to be in this relationship? How do I need to show up? But who do I need to be in this situation? Really get straight to that um, values and meaning level, very, very, very quickly. And
Yeah.
I think you just get the client gets a completely different perspective, and then you can do some really deep work on those values and that core character, which then impacts thinking and feeling, which then obviously gets better results
Hmm.
and action,
Nice.
in my opinion.
You know, what I find fascinating and very well, I think it's meaningful, and where you kind of hit the meaning as a coach
Hmm.
is when the client says, that question is causing me to reevaluate
Hmm.
some of my old beliefs. And that sort of like, so I never have heard it that way. Um, I
Hmm.
love that. I mean, it's very gratifying just
Hmm.
as a coach
Yeah.
when you watch right in front of you, the client just making those fundamental shifts.
Yeah, and yourself, of course, because it's a transformational process every time you meet with somebody without getting too weird about it all. So who do I need to be for this client today? And that's what we were taught in our program. Actually, we had to fill out all these forms about preparation before every single client, and then it would be about who do you need to be for this client.
Hmm.
You see. Another thing I tend to ask is one of the if anybody wants to take anything away from today, it would be the question: what needs to happen or be in place?
Hmm.
Okay, along with who do I need to be? So if I'm in the work context, and in fact I was coaching somebody recently, and I shared this resource with them, this question, and they've used it in their team meetings ever since. And he said that all he ever needs to ask is what needs to happen and be in place,
Hmm.
and the whole team gets coached instantly through that question.
Hmm.
And
That's a
then he's
great
been getting
question.
amazing results,
Hmm.
which has really surprised me sometimes. But then as a classic, then I said, okay, Bill, who do you need to be? Ask them how do they need to be? Who do they need to be? As well as what needs to happen and be in place.
Hmm.
Do they need to be more courageous? And what is that like? How does that feel? What difference will it make? All those type of things. Very simple. And this guy comes back. He said, "I cannot believe the difference it makes." Just simple.
Hmm.
It's interesting as you said that I a comma was inserted in my head, and I added for who. So who do you need to be For who? Is
Oh, I
that
like that.
like whose voice is that? That's
Yeah.
saying who you need to.
I don't know. So there's from another program that I'd done a long time ago. It's about neutral witnessing, and I just wonder. It's great. I don't know the answer, David, and I'm sure. Um, is it David or Dave, or I mean, or
Dave is fine.
Dave is fine.
Yeah, only when I wear my green shirt, I'm called
Okay,
David. Red shirt is Dave.
right. Yeah, I have a different name for every shirt that I wear too.
The formality of it all and the tuxedo.
Yeah, there we go. That's for another podcast.
This is Keep It Clean, boys.
I know.
I know. I was raised on sarcasm. I would have been told.
This is
Matt
why we
knows.
get on, because I'm British, and we, as you know, we love that. If you hadn't noticed, so neutral witnessing, and I wonder then, Dave, in the red shirt, if not that voice is that neutral witness.
Mm.
So I'm not sure it really matters. I think the question is asked, and the voice comes from whoever it needs to come from and to, without getting too philosophical about it.
Mm.
So I love that concept of a neutral witnessing, which really is about as least judgment as possible. Because people say, "Oh, no judgment." I said, "Don't be ridiculous," because we judge all the time. Existentially, we're always judging, because that's the way we are as humans, because it's a safety thing. We always judge. So this concept of never judging is silly. Sorry, people. But we can be as neutral as possible to give that space for the client to be. Again, it goes nicely, and thanks for that lead, Dave. When we're sort of co-creating that coaching space, and again, going back to my initial coaching program, we would call it, the coach's job is to help the client build the greenhouse.
Mm.
Because it's in the greenhouse where the acceleration of transformation occurs, because of the conditions that coaching provides. So that neutral witnessing allows the coach to be whoever they need to be for the coachee. Also,
Mark, if you were receiving coaching, what would you really want from a coach? What are some of the things that you look for when you're doing your meet and greet? You're like, maybe this will work, maybe it won't.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I think that's the hardest question, but I wonder, is it really? Because I look for and enjoy being with a coach that barely says anything. So if a coach is too talkative or too energetic or wants to share too many things, that might put me off. So, however, if I get the sense that the coach is able to listen deeply, but even more, is able to be present with their whole being, and I get that connection and that understanding from them very, very early on in the coaching conversation, then I think that is the coach for me, because they're going to let me really explore that deeper level without too much noise.
Nice. Mark, what are a few things that you'd recommend? You've always, for years, so for those who don't know, Mark and I worked together for years, and some resources that what are some resources? Maybe I would say on the coaching side.
Yes.
Unless you've got some other ones. I mean, you've turned me on to How Adults Learn. I love that book. Other things, but what are some good coaching resources?
Coaching. I've got 2 coaching books and something, then a website which people may be aware of already. And let's start with that one. It's via strengths, VIVA strengths, character strengths, should I say? So people can just do a search for that. And it's a pretty easy standard. I'm sure it's not psychometric. It's not psychometrically validated or anything like that in regards to helping somebody understand their strengths, their top 10 and their not so well used 20, a 10 out of 20. And so the way that I use it, particularly with my client group, which we haven't really talked about today, and I'm a certified professional recovery coach. So I tend to focus on clients who are in the first year of recovery from addiction, with the focus of helping them maintain sobriety and avoid relapse. So that's, if you like, my speciality. So we do a lot of values work, and so the VIA strengths helps them identify what the strengths are, because strengths operationalize values. So I get them to identify their strengths as part of the value work. So everybody, that's the if you like, the web resource I would suggest. Going back to sort of the theme of the conversation today, and then operating at the level I've been talking about, at the meaning is this book, Coach the Person, Not the Problem. People may be aware of this. If there's a book that I return to a lot to remind myself that really talks about more articulately, see, I can't even say the word, in a more articulate fashion, in a very simple, structured and deep way, is this book around operating at that third level, at that deeper level. Because what do we often do is, especially if we're behavioralists or we're focusing just on actions and results, again, there's nothing wrong with that, but we could do even more, is that we focus on the problem and we're not necessarily focused on the person. And I think that's a really big aha for many, many people. And then the final one, from a professional development perspective, is this book, which is relatively new. I've got my hours for PCC qualification now, but I've got to do obviously everything else that's around it, from the recordings to some more training, more learning, etc. This book, and I was on a webinar with this lady. She's absolutely crazy, funny. But she's written the book, and she really goes through and makes great sense, I think, of a very confusing space of how do I get through credentialing, how do I get to MCC if you want to. I don't particularly want to. PCC would be good enough for me. But how do you really do that, considering when the regulations and criteria and curriculum change so much? So this came out, I think, last year, or maybe 2023, so it's still pretty fresh. And this lady also provides, and her company provides, programs that get you to that space for about $1,500, I believe. Okay, nice. So they're my three resources, Matt and Dave, to share with you.
They are fabulous, and I'm this is that last one I have not heard of, and I'm interested in diving in and seeing people's approach to it. I was going to go to a reflection, but I actually have a question for you, Mark, which is, you have so much experience in coaching and learning development, and when you added recovery coaching, the question I have is, what did you learn about yourself, your ability to affect change in the recovery space?
Well, I mean, to be honest, it's something that I've dealt with personally myself. So that I got my own story, and there's obviously a spiritual, emotional connection, that there is a deeper understanding because I know what it's like. I think one of the challenges, even if you have your own story in this space, is that people come from all sorts of addictions and have very troubled lives, and are dealing with a lot of mental health issues. And of course, I'm not there as a therapist. I'm not there as a mental health professional in one way, even though I believe coaching can profoundly help in this space, and I've seen it do so. I feel that you still have lots of judgments about what people do, and I find myself constantly checking myself, and again, never unable to judge, as I said earlier on, but being that neutral witness and having to learn that, even when sometimes what people are saying are very, very difficult. I may actually go against my values, and I guess that is something I know a lot of us do in our coaching programs, and as we grow as coaches, is to be able to do that. But in recovery coaching, I think it's one of the most rewarding, but also one of the most challenging spaces because of the distress and disorder that there is. However, people out there is a great need for people to specialize in recovery coaching because, as we know, over COVID, people got into all sorts of addictions that they probably may not never have done because of isolation and lack of connectedness with people. So if people are looking for a niche or a niche, as my beloved American friends say, that's a great one to go in, because there's not enough recovery coaches who really understand or been trained in a particular way to understand this particular client group. That's a very long answer to your question, David.
That's really good. Yeah.
It was fabulous. Yeah. And that's my reflection is like I can sense your presence in being able to like hold that neutral space as you're going deeper. And I know it, as you go deeper, it's tougher. It's more challenging to not have judgment come in. So I really appreciate that about you. And I definitely have a sense of it from our conversation.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think my reflection, obviously I've known you for many years, Mark. And one of the things that I heard even today was, I guess it's probably a slogan or something like that, that you can't give away what you don't have. And I know you have it. I think that's probably what has connected us for so long, Mark. And I find your candor very disarming to people and very endearing as a quality in a coach, so that people would want you as a coach because you feel like you could say anything. And so, when you talked about having that neutral voice, I've certainly experienced it.
And I appreciate that, Matt. And I just want to just very, very quickly say, I think that came from my nursing, because when I was 19 as a student nurse, you would be exposed to things that probably a 19-year-old wasn't necessarily able to. Somebody's lost their leg, somebody's lost a baby, and so you had to be a neutral witness and just be with somebody, and you don't know, you're panicking inside, you don't know what to say, so you're just there you learn to be present with somebody at the absolute worst time in their life. So in a way, I think I learned that when I was very young, to be honest, in another profession, and of course transferring that skill, if you like, into what I do now.
So you're telling me I can learn it.
There's hope, Matt. There's hope, Matt.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Even you.
All right. Perfect.
And I just
like
to
Jim
add,
Carrey.
Right?
Tell me I have a chance.
You have a chance. My daughter, who is Princess Samantha, I call her, is a physician assistant. She tells me that your success is based on the patient when they leave following the treatment plan, right? Your efficacy.
Yes.
So I love what you said about, you can't judge, and then you got to leave people motivated and safe and energized to follow the plan. And so I really appreciate that you shared that. And
thank you.
Mark, what's the best way people can get in touch with you? Say our audience wants to just connect with you.
I would just say that email is probably the easiest, which is Veary Coaching, MVEARY Coaching @gmail.com.
Nice. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for asking.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to give that last shout out to, are you feeling stuck or overwhelmed? Character Matters Coaching and Consulting provides leadership coaching and consulting to empower you to overcome obstacles and reach your full potential. Visit charactermatterscoaching.com to learn more about their transformative coaching and how to get connected to Matt for your organization. Thank you so much, Mark. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation.
Me too. I love it.
Me too.
I'll come back.
Sounds good. Until next time.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you love this podcast, please share it with another coach or leader. Make sure you go to the show notes to get all the resources from today's episode.